So welcome everyone to building dynamic web apps with Kotlin, web components and Htmx. I'm Richard. I usually like to do archaeology. Was anyone at the earlier archaeology talk? Well, okay. In the spawn of this, I also modernized systems, and that kind of led me to Htmx. Quick question before we start. Who has heard of Htmx before? Everyone who has used Htmx? Okay, 3 people. Okay, good. So, I spent the last 2 years full stack. Angular with TypeScript and Node.js with TypeScript or Fastify. And I had some realizations. And the first one to me was, we're kind of writing everything twice. We have the server, and the server has different things we have to write there. We have to use dependencies, we have to use monitoring, we have to use caching, model view controller and everything. And we have to do the DTO mapping. And on the client in my Angular app, we have the same thing. We also have dependencies, of course. We sort of need to push the telemetry, so we have it available in the backend. We need to do caching as well. We need to do authorization as well. We need to do routing as well. We need to do templates, which are sort of the equivalent to the DTO. In the backend, we don't have models. We have view models. We typically cannot use exactly the same DTO to display it. We have to do put additional stuff there. We have to do stores, which are sort of the equivalent to controllers in the backend. And of course, we also write business logic. And then we add state management, and then we add hydration, and then we add whatever on top, right? So it's kind of twice. That was my first realization. The second one, and we cannot skip doing that because we can never trust the client. If we don't validate in the backend, someone can just push something to the backend which is invalid. It will blow up there or it will blow up later. So we cannot stop doing that. The other thing is we are maintaining at least 2 versions. We are maintaining, of course, the server in, let's say, version 1.2. And of course, it's the newest one because everyone automatically gets it. We have the client, also version 1.2, and they communicate with the schema. And the problem is, it's not, everyone doesn't have the same client. No, it's, 11%, depending on when you released it, who have the newest version. And then you have, well, the older version that most people have, but it's from last week. And then you have maybe even people who haven't updated in a long while because they haven't refreshed their browser or whatever. And you can, of course, force customers to update. You can be like, hey, I'm going to push a modal dialog and tell you, you have to refresh your page now. But that's very, very invasive. And some customers don't want to do it, and most users hate it because usually, they are in the process of doing some work, and then this pop-up comes and says that you cannot continue unless you refresh the page, and they're like, yeah, but where's the thing I've been writing going to go? So yeah, not a good thing. And of course, our team was just about to migrate because, well, Angular is releasing every 6 months, and we should probably go from modules to standalones, from regular binding RxJS to signals, and from directives to literals, etc., etc., etc. So we are also in this process of migrating constantly to newer versions because sooner or later the old stuff is going to be deprecated. Does this feel familiar? Yeah, I see some nods. Who's like mostly focused on React here? Okay, I say half. Mostly Angular? Vue? Anything out of the ordinary? Svelte? Oh, cool. Right, so we have more Svelte than Vue. I didn't expect that. The thing is, After these 2 years, the next project came knocking. Very typical, I'm a consultant, so I switch project once in a while. And this project required, in the end, data tables, forms, and diagrams. It was also greenfield. I had a lot of, or my team had a lot of leeway what technologies we could adopt. And I think this project was very typical, at least in my experience, because like 90% of all business apps are data tables, models, and forms. I don't know, to me it feels like this. I've also talked to other people in the company, and that's very, very typical. Sometimes you get nice things like, I don't know, diagrams, visualizations, pie charts, Sankey charts, whatever in there, but it's always like, here's a table with lots of content. It has, I don't know, 40 columns, because we need those. And in my experience, I had only like a couple of instances in a project where we needed like displaying a route on a map, and we used Leaflet for that. So I think most business apps are not Google Maps, Google Sheets, Spotify or Miro. It's most are look kind of like Amazon or Gmail or Twitter or whatever. Just a lot more tables. Who agrees with this statement? Okay, I'm going to say something like, yeah, 90%. So 90% agree with 90% of the statement. That's good. And the thing I would like to have is, can I get the good stuff of the front-end development space of the last 20 years, the same user experience, but without all these problems I listed in the beginning? And can I have cool code, not template languages? I mean, don't get me wrong. Angular is good, but this whole template language, and I have to learn the template syntax, and it's recently changed, that annoys me. I would just like to write code and have transferable experience. I also would like to have the components. I also like this quick prototyping. I type something, then it immediately changes, and I can view it in the browser. Awesome. And I do like all the testability progress that has happened in front-end space. But I would also, in addition, like to have full stack type and API safety. So like the second problem, I have to maintain multiple versions. That's kind of annoying. I would like to have like one version. And I would like to know that when I make some changes in the backend, it immediately works in the frontend. I would like to have this quick API modeling. If I have an API, I would just be able to change it immediately. As little redundancy as possible, of course. Preferably only one stack. That's kind of utopic, because there is going to be some form of JavaScript or WASM that will be shipped, but preferably only one stack and not have everything twice. And ideally also simple enough for everyone, meaning everyone in the development team. So, enter the JavaScript rising star of 2024, and in second place 2023, Htmx. And I mean, you can see what is directly below Htmx, right? Everyone knows this logo. Okay. So that got me interested. And the other thing which I found also quite interesting, that in this soup down here of the state of JavaScript report, down there is a soup of component frameworks, Svelte, Htmx, Preact, and whatnot. There's also Htmx. I think it's like top 9 or ninth spot in this particular usage analysis. So that was interesting. And then this talk came around. And has anyone seen that? Okay, only a few. So once you're done with this talk, watch that one. Because this is about going from React to Htmx. He does the migration, And he explains all the points very, very well. And he does a lot of. He also does a lot of demo, which is this app you can see here. It's very interactive. It's got this bar up here that moves up and down. You can move stuff around. It's got this article favorite stuff here. It's got lots and lots and lots of text, and it's very, very performant and everything. Looks very interesting. And the author, Davi, he comes up with these metrics. He says we needed 67% less code because they only have one stack. We had no UX trade-offs. Cool. The performance was significantly better. Before they had React, and they had one React developer, and time constraint and everything. This React developer didn't implement all the typical React patterns you need to have good performance. So no fault on this, but if you only have one expert, that's kind of what happens. And in the end, everyone in the team became full stack, so everyone was able to adapt and modify this site. And I don't know about you, but it's the holy grail, isn't it? And kind of fishy. I mean, really? All of them? It's like, it's exactly what I want. Does it actually? Is it the grail? I don't know. So what is this magic of Htmx? How can it make everything happen? And Htmx achieves a lot of simplicity by sending HTML, not JSON. So on the left side, you see the typical server-client thing. You have double the stacks, the authorization, controllers, stores, whatever, and they communicate via JSON. And Htmx says, no, we're going to flip that. The server has still the same stack, but the server now declares in the HTML where HTML can be swapped in and out. And then it sends this HTML to the client, and on the client is a swapping library that can, with a very declarative logic, say, okay, I'm going to now swap the thing that the server just sent me with this other thing here. And because it does that, I can skip and remove all the stack in the front end, in the client. Again, sounds still too good to be true, right? But it's the core here really is the server drives the logic and the interactions, and that's what gives this Htmx approach the power. Yes, a hand.
This sounds awfully familiar to very old ASP.NET Ajax.
This sounds awfully familiar to very old ASP.NET Ajax. I'm going to yes and no. But yeah, I mean, everyone here in this room knows that the internet or the web was invented something like 1990, and the HTML was the first form of interaction. And now we are saying, hey, how about we go back to sending HTML to the client? So yes, it will feel familiar. I will come back to your question in the end, but let's table it for now, because now I will show some examples. So here we have HTML that implements click to load. We have an article. In this article, we have a section. This section, very importantly, line 2, has an ID. It's just here called replace me. And then you have a button. And this button has two very important attributes. It has hx for HTMX, hx get, which will, once the button is clicked, fire a request to context/number2 for the ID number 2. And then this GET request will get back HTML, and it will take this HTML and put it where the target is. In this case, the target is replace me. So how does it look? Well, we click on the button, the server responds with the section, and then the HTMX library will now replace the whole section called replace me, and it will look like this. Yes? And that's two attributes. So click to load, very, very typical pattern, right? You need it in many apps. How about lazy load? You now have 3 attributes. The same hx get. The trigger. Now the trigger is very, very interesting. In the example before, the trigger was just click, and that's the default, and that's usually a good trigger. But we can change it. We can say the trigger is once something on the page is revealed, and it's revealed once, meaning for the first time. We can put any standard DOM JavaScript event there as well, meaning we can trigger these using other things as well. Here we don't need that, but we can also write our own custom JavaScript events. And these are standard JavaScript events that have been available ever since JavaScript existed. And what will we swap? We will swap after end. Now, and what is after end? Well, it's after end of the attribute it's in, meaning the section. So imagine you have an article with a lot of sections, and you scroll down, 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 and down there at the bottom you reach, it's revealed, and then it takes whatever it gets from the server and it appends it at the end, after end. And if at the end of that, what you appended, you put a new trigger called revealed once, guess what? You can scroll down, 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 and it's going to be revealed again. So, lazy load. It's not the best UX pattern out there. There's a reason Google went back to pagination in their search page, but this is a thing you can do, and it just requires 3 attributes. And I think the reason this example is here is just because it shows the power of these attributes. And for all of what I've just shown you, you just need 4 attributes. I'm grouping get and put and post into the same category here. Because these are just the standard HTTP methods. You have the hx get, the hx put, etc. You have the hx trigger, which can be also key down or changed, and you can also put delay in there, like every 1 second or something like this. You can put a custom event in there if you want to. Hx targets, you can say a standard CSS selector for ID or the class, or you can even write closest before that. You can say pick the closest element with that class. And with hx swap, you can say, do I want to swap the thing inside or the whole thing, outer HTML? Do I want to swap after or before, whatever. So that's the power. The other thing is you have additional attributes that also make sense. These are more situational. You have hx push. So when you click on something, do you want it to be represented in URL, yes or no? You have hx boost. You can, if you put it on something, any link will work normally. But what Htmx will do is, you click on the link, it fetches the HTML from wherever the HTML comes from, and then it will swap it for you. And that's slightly faster, or slightly more, it feels better than having the browser do the full page refresh. You have hxx extension, where you can put your own extensions, or the supplied ones, which are used for server-sent events or WebSockets. And you have the very special swap out of band and select out of band. These are used when you want to update content in multiple places with the same request at once. Right. I think it covers about 95% of the interactions we want to make. Why? Because typically when you make an interaction, you want the state to be on the server. You click on something and you want to change something on the server. You normally don't want to click on something and it stays on your machine. So that's why 95% of the interactions. What about the other 5%? What about things where we want to change something on the client and it shouldn't be reflected on the server? Well, that's where web components can help. So web components, who has heard of web components? Okay, awesome, cool. Yeah, so then you might already know that web components are framework-less components, meaning you don't need to install anything for it, because browsers have supported it for more than 2.5 years. I think it's closer to 4 or 5 or something like this. Someone in the audience probably has the answer, how long web components have been supported in all browsers. Yeah, no download is required, and you can write pretty much anything that you can write in React or Angular. You can write as a web component, but it doesn't require download, right? Using something like declarative shadow DOM, you can also have scoped CSS, meaning CSS that is only applied to this one component. I don't think web components are the answer. But first, let me show you how they look like. You write to custom elements. So meaning you call a JavaScript function called custom elements, and then you define your component. It has to have this hyphen in there, otherwise it's not valid. So remember that. Why? Because standard HTML elements don't have the hyphen. So that's why you can know that it's a web component. And you get, I think it's 4 lifecycle methods. One of them is connected callback, which is called when the thing is available on the screen. You can get attributes. You will see how that. Actually, let me reveal how it's used first. So inside any HTML, you can now put your custom component, the awesome maker here. It can have standard attributes, and you can get them in the JavaScript code as well. And using the query selector, which is scoped to this particular web component, you can fetch anything inside. So meaning, if the awesome maker inside is an image tag, you can fetch that. And again, it's scoped to this, so it won't look in the whole DOM, it will just look in your web component. I think they are not the answer because they are a bit verbose to write. So I prefer HTML web components. The idea came from this blog post down there mentioned in the right corner. And the idea is, if your custom element is empty, it's not an HTML web component. But if your custom element exists to extend, if you're using your custom element to extend existing markup, meaning if there's markup inside, then it's an HTML web component. Why is that important? Because HTML web components are significantly easier to write. So if you've ever tried to write a web component by hand, you will know it's a bit annoying. And you will probably have reached for a tool like lit or stencil or whatever, which again increases your bundle size. And so that's the writing part. The other part is by sort of always thinking of how can I extend markup inside, I'm automatically thinking more in terms of reusable components. I'm automatically looking this and like, okay, how can I make some existing stuff more reusable? How can I add to existing stuff, and that automatically leads to more reusable components. How can that look like? Well, you can give HTML to the ability to render relative time. This is the relative time element that is published to NPM by GitHub. And what is cool is, on the left side, I send this datetime in here, and this web component will render the relative time on my machine. And that is great, because that means I can send everyone the same timestamp, and it can be cached. And then the machine can calculate the relative time on that machine, meaning I don't have to, I mean, think about it. If you have 1,000 clients and all of them have their own relative time. Another example is I can give HTML the ability to compare two images. So I create this image compare inside, I nest, let's say here, 2 images, then I get this slider that can reveal one or the other. I mean, probably seen some image compares on the web, and that's something that someone has already written for you. But what about component libraries? Are there component libraries we can already use? I would suggest you start with vanilla HTML. I don't know about you, but I'm always surprised when I open the input tag on Mozilla Developer Network It's got so many awesome types. I mean, it's got a color picker, it's got a date picker, it's got a range picker, it's got a picker. It's like, I don't know, 20 different types, and they're already there, and they're already designed with accessibility in mind. You can use the details per summary element to get accordions out of the box. You can use data list for autocomplete. With Htmx, you can fill this autocomplete automatically and dynamically. Your form has amazing validation built in. Not all things you want to validate, of course, but required, and the regex pattern in there is already a long way, and it already provides some visualizations for that. You have the dialog, which is an HTML native modal, where you click on it and it blocks all interactions to the other stuff. And once this command 4 attribute will become baseline widely available, it's already available in Chrome, but not in Firefox, not in Safari. Once this command 4 is available, dialogs will work without any JavaScript. And you just click on a button, it will open a modal just by itself, and you can close the modal, and it will close the modal by itself without any JavaScript. Picture and search, which wrap around image tags and search inputs. Soon there will be a nice customizable select. You know, the select that has been available in your browsers for ages. Soon, I think in Chrome it's already customizable, but not in all browsers. And even later, there's this OpenUI project, and they have a long list of standard vanilla HTML tags that they will make customizable and improve and align across all browsers. And this will be amazing. But we're talking about right now. So the second option is HTML web components. GitHub has a library called Elements, which are amazing. Take a look at them. You also have listings of awesome standalones. Of course, you have web component libraries. To me, that's at least the third option. Showlace is a very popular one. It's just based on web components. There's even the website webcomponents.org, which lists all the community creations. And of course, you can take any existing library and wrap it and make it a web component if you want to. And using something like import maps, that makes it possible to just put here a web component that you call AG grid or leaflet or whatever, and you just make it web component compatible. Good. Does it really work? We created this stack. It might not be your stack, but we stuck with Kotlin on the backend. We used the template language, which was Kotlinx.html. That sort of influenced also the Kotlin decision, because you will see this in the demo. The Kotlinx.html is a DSL for HTML, and it's type safe, and it's written in Kotlin. That's awesome. As a swapper, we used Htmx, and for client markup mutation, we used web components. Down at the bottom, of course, we used the design system of our customer. And as it happens, most modern design systems have like multiple layering. So on the bottom, you typically have some form of CSS that they provide. And then on top, they put web components. And on top of that, they put the React Vue Svelte derivatives. But yeah, maybe we were just lucky, but that seems to be my impression. We could have used a whole lot of alternatives. Just saying. Doesn't have to be this particular stack, but it's the one I typically like, and I will show you why in the demo. Okay. Whoa, I have to kneel down a lot. Okay, so that's the demo, dynamic web with Htmx. You can see up here, poof. There we go. It's the relative time element from GitHub. And it will change every time that we do a full page refresh. Now, we can go here and search. And let's see, inspect. There we go. Okay. If I click here on Add Basket, oh no, actually let's do the search first. So you can see down there I have tractor. Poof. Oh, did I write that wrong? Oh, please refresh page and log in. Ah, okay, my session expired. Oh well. So much for my demo. Anyway, so again, tractor. And that just happened instantly, right? I didn't have to download all the 100 pages of content. I just tapped tractor and now I only have tractor. If you look on the right side, you can also see how that works. Poof. Well, almost. Let's see. There we go. So the T-body was updated. So if we look at the network tab, when I remove that, you see how it sent the search request? Or if I type Mac, it sends the search request again. And the response of that is, well, the Mac for about 2,000 euros. I guess I picked a cheap one. And some 3 Macs are in stock. See, it just swaps HTML. And when I do something like this, boop, it gets all the other pages. Okay? That's active search. Right, that's active search. Now, right? You can see how this one already has updated. So the last full replace was 1 minute ago. You can see up here, this is a drop-down. This is a details and summary drop-down. So if you look at this, that's just the standard HTML details element with the summary, and the summaries are count. And I can just click on that. I mean, it doesn't look beautiful and everything, but yeah. And then it opens. And the thing that it shows when it opens is the thing that is not in the summary, meaning the profile and this wonderful form button. So, standard HTML. Now, when I click on Add Basket, 2 things have to update. First, the count in this row has to update. Second of all, my basket count has to update. So I have to update 2 things at once. Up. Let's move that again. So, see how that updated there? And again, and again, and again, and again. When I click on something here, the response will just be the row with the updated stock amount, and here the button is removed. If we look at the previous ad, it will still have the button, or the form button. Okay, but that's just, that's just this one thing. Meaning it's I'm just only explaining how the row is updated. If I click on this one now, you can see that every time I click on the ad, immediately afterward, a count is also called. And these ones are always done at the same time. And the response of the count is, yeah, okay, it's a bit hard to see, but this is the value up here. And the way it works is because my ad, there we go. Okay, so my ad request in the response comes an HX trigger that is submitted after the swap. and that trigger is store basket changed. And that's the standard JavaScript element. Probably should have removed this. Oh well. And this up here triggers. See that? So my trigger now is a custom JavaScript event. And because it's a standard JavaScript event, I can also hook into that from anywhere if I want to. But I can also do progressive enhancement for applications. And that's the primary possibility to update 2 places or 3 or 4 places at once. The other one are out-of-band swaps, which are on the slide deck, but I don't have time to go into. Yeah, if I click on basket, you see that there was a full replace. Why was there full replace? Because these links up here are progressively enhanced. Meaning, they fire all the same requests that they normally would do, but Htmx just does the swapping locally. Okay. Yeah, if I click remove, of course, the same thing has to happen. It's the same trigger. Where is it? There. Store basket changed. Okay. So now dynamic. So I am running this on my machine, obviously, and now, unless the gods of live demos are against me, I can just update this to NDC Oslo. Oh yeah, they are definitely against me, because they didn't click on the live reload button. Okay. Let me do this again. NDC Oslo 2025. Okay. Yes. Okay. I mean, I tapped a bit fast, maybe. Maybe that's the response. But I can do the same UI prototyping as I did before. As I do in TypeScript, it's the same live reload stuff going on here. I'm pretty sure it's the same technology because this is just standard live reload server. The other thing is I am using Kotlin here, meaning everything is fun. Okay, thank you. Thank you, all the 5 people, thank you. And I'm using a library called Kotlinx.html. And the cool part is, on my backend is not a single line of HTML. It's all written with this DSL. And you can see it here. The DSL says, I have a table. Inside the table is a table head. The table head has a table row. The table row has a table header. Right? And if I were to put, I don't know, let's say I want to put the table row here. Okay, that's apparently allowed. Let's see, T-body. Yeah, okay. T-body is also, of course, also allowed inside the table. If I wanted to put a T-body here, there we go. Then it's not allowed, because a table body, of course, is only allowed inside a table. So, and yeah. That gives me, of course, type safety, because now, well, it gives me type safety, but it also gives me code safety. The other thing is, when I look at my edit dialog, you can see I have like this edit product, and this formula has 2 fields, and an edit button, and this formula is generated. There we go. on the server. And now on the server, I can define, I have my product form data. There needs to be an ID, a name, and a price and cents. I can do validation on here via annotations. I mean, you don't have to, but that's the way I do it. And then in my formula down here, when I say this is an input field where you can put the name, I say the name is exactly the same name as this product form data. And I hope I put some validation in here. Yes. Once the validation fails, I also do that on the server. Okay. Let me see. We go to the basket page again. Yeah, okay. Here you can see how we defined the count fragment. All right, sorry. That's probably, I should also probably explain that. So I have full pages that I can access with mapping, get mapping for the index of the basket. This returns a page. But when I, but I also have this ability of Htmx to just swap parts of the page, and for those I define fragments. And for example, the basket count fragment, which is, well, this. And I have an endpoint for that. So that's what this one is for. And because I'm writing code, I can also say, hey, I have a fixed amount of paths, and I can see already, okay, where's count called? Okay, count is called, of course, in the controller because I have a mapping for that. But it's also called here in the attributes of hxget. Let me see if I can show another thing. Okay, yeah. Here you have the relative time by GitHub, this element, and that's just simply put into the header of the application, and then I can put it relative time. Yay. And then I can put it in my code like this. So meaning I also have components. Or I don't know. I mean, components are always like tricky. I find it very hard to define components. I don't know about you, but I say these are components because it feels like writing JSX, and to me that makes it a component. Yes. Okay. So. Let's go into the problems. Whenever I show a demo of Htmx, there's always someone who jumps up and says, with Htmx you can't do offline. And yeah, kind of. Because the thing is, offline capability is not binary, it's not yes or no. It depends on what you want to provide offline. So, I mean, if you, just as simple, I don't have any complex offline capability in here, but the back button, it will show the thing in forward and backward the browser has in the cache. So it's, oh, hoppala. So it's not that Htmx doesn't have offline capability. Every browser has offline capability already built in. But of course only for reads, right? I can cache a lot of stuff locally very easily with Htmx and provide that. If I want to have a more complicated navigation capability, I can theoretically, I don't recommend this, but I can theoretically also put a service worker that intercepts our requests, looks, hey, do I have that in my cache, and just serves that HTML that it has cached before. The second scale is making offline drafts. What do I mean by that? So a draft typically doesn't have any validation. I can write whatever I want in my draft, and no validation will kick in. That is very, very easy to do with Htmx because it's just a form. Of course, at some point, and there comes the break, what about making conflict-free offline changes? Now, there are things that I want to be able to do offline, and once I go online again, no conflict should happen. And to be able to do that, I have to have, depending on the use case, a lot or a little business logic on the client. Htmx has no use case for that. That's really not the point of the library. It's all about the server driving this. As soon as you start shipping a business logic in quantities to the client, that's no business of Htmx. What about having all server data available locally so all changes can be made conflict-free? Depending on your use case, it might not be possible because you have gigabytes or terabytes of data on your server, meaning there will always be only a subset of actions that can be made conflict-free. And the fifth one is providing these offline capabilities even when users are offline for weeks or months. Why? Because you continuously update your backend, and you have to somehow guarantee that the client who's been in, I don't know, Buxtehude, yeah, some Germans here, for months and hasn't had internet, and then he comes back on and does the change, and then it just breaks and all his data is lost that he's made offline. So it's not binary. And up to a certain point, you can do this with Htmx if it's really useful for use case. I don't know. That's highly individual. What about this one? That one was awesome. I posted on LinkedIn that I will be holding this talk here, and I immediately got a direct message by someone saying, "Hey, with Htmx you can't do unit testing, therefore it's bad." Like, what? Okay. You can unit test the business logic. It's just in one place on the server. So, okay, what do you want of unit testing? You can do that. How about the rendering? You have the render functions, the Kotlinx.html function. You can unit test that. You can unit test the controllers if you want to. What do you, in addition, want to unit test? You can also do component tests. Now you have to write a bit more code because you have to expose your components like a storybook would do it. And then you can use Cypress or Playwright or whatever you want to run component tests against that. But I think in the end you can just save a lot of time because you don't do front-end tests and back-end tests separately. Whenever you test the logic, you test it in one place, meaning the backend. Going into more qualified arguments why you shouldn't use Htmx. The makers of Htmx are very, very open about not using the library in certain cases. And they publish this. They publish this, for example, here, why Gumroad didn't choose Htmx, or, whoops, when to use hypermedia, or meaning when to use Htmx. So, a couple of non-obvious ones. The intuition and the developer experience. It takes a while because you think, before you start thinking and saying, how can I shift this to the server? How can I make it responsibility of the server? And maybe you will never want to adapt to this server-driven mindset. Your team must be on board with this thinking. If you have a lone wolf who wants to do that, then it will fail because, as it happens, developers are also stakeholders. You typically cannot copy-paste components. You cannot go and say, hey, I'm going to take this bootstrap thing and copy it there, or this something and copy it there. Why? Because you always have to build the interactivity on the backend. So of course you can use example code, and there's lots available, including the one I present to you here. But if your stack is not precisely Kotlin and Kotlinx.html, you cannot copy it, because it's all driven by the server. So the stack needs to match. And the examples are good, but few. There's the awesome official website, and they provide lots of examples. They provide, for example, also examples for how to do reorderable tables. There's 3 very good books about this one. This one, Hypermedia Systems, has probably the richest content. This one is more focused on Spring, and this one I think it was Go and Htmx and Thymeleaf. All of them are good, but you probably won't find it in your typical source, wherever you typically use for examples. I mean, Stack Overflow is always a good idea, but it probably won't be in the other places you look. Now, that said, I think with Htmx you can do 95% of all interactivity you need, because we're not building Google Maps here. If you attempt on the road, you can use the rule of least power, which is one of the core tenets of of web development. It's literally down there. It's the W3 who has this blog post about the least power. And you can start with HTML and vanilla HTML elements. The elements that are available are growing continuously, and what is baseline is also continuously evolving. Who here has heard of baseline, by the way? Okay, should have explained this more. So there's a project called Baseline by Google and Mozilla and Apple and so on, and they say that something is baseline newly available if it's supported across the 4 major browsers, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, and Safari. And they say it's baseline widely available if it's been available for 2.5 years. Depending on what your company has as update policy, some companies have something like you have to always be on the newest Chrome version, then baseline newly available might be a good choice for you. If companies are more restricted or reserved and, for example, use the Firefox LTS releases, then you should probably go more for baseline widely available. Anyway, so after HTML, you can use CSS to do a lot of effects, a lot of rendering, a lot of transitions, a lot of animations are already available in CSS. You don't need JavaScript for that. And the great part about using CSS for that is that it will be generally faster because it's all run on your GPU. So the first question you should always ask yourself, does your app even need more interactivity? Some people might come out of this and say, I don't even need HTMX. And the second one would be, as soon as multi-page CSS transitions, meaning transitions between multiple pages, individual pages, as soon as they will become widely available, even a lot of HTMX might not longer be needed. There are examples of a person building everything in their sites, including their modals and including their drop-downs, just with CSS page transitions. I don't recommend that, but that's awesome. Anyway, on top of that is, of course, HTMX. Then you have the, it should write HTML web components, element extensions are an alternative name. And on top left, you have the regular web components, so the Shoelace library. But in the end, it doesn't have to be our stack. It's hypermedia over whatever you like. So you need something to declare the swaps, you need something to swap it on the client, and you need some form of client markup mutations. We picked web components, but there's also Alpine, for example, that's very nice to use. Different people use different things. Here's the Hey stack, meaning the stack of the Hey Gmail alternative, but this has, I don't know, millions of users worldwide. It uses Rails, Turbo, and Stimulus. There's the Aha stack. Aha. Alpine, HTMX, Astro, HTMX, and Alpine.js. There's also the Ham stack. These are just fun names, that's why they're here. And yeah, let's see what we went with. We had our productive app. We picked code, not template languages, with Kotlinx.html. We picked components, and that works. We had quick UI prototyping. You saw the change I did. Also works the same way when you want to change the markup. We have the testability, and in general you have to write a lot less tests because you don't have to do them twice. You have the full stack type and API safety. You saw the forms earlier. We have the quick API remodeling. Because it's all driven by the server, you can remodel whatever you want. You have as little redundancy as possible because you have one stack. Preferably only one tech stack. Yeah, there's still JavaScript in there. I'm still waiting for Kotlin multi-platform to support ES 2015 because you need classes to write web components, and I can probably also write my web components just in Kotlin. And simple enough for everyone. Ish depends on the mindset, but you know, it worked for us. So how can you pitch this to management? Hey management, we're going to start with a lightweight approach, and we will adapt once this approach no longer works. Then it sounds kind of, you know, low invest and everything, and you can probably go very, very far with this. Obviously, pivot when it doesn't work. When the UI interactivity becomes too high and you realize, okay, this definitely needs React or Angular or whatever you need. Okay. Thank you very much. I would be very, very happy if you were to take the left QR code and provide some feedback. As a token of my gratitude, you can also have the PDF, the slides as PDF. Of course, they're still available on my website. Of course, they're also available through NDC Oslo. So that's not a requirement, but you know, if you want them as PDF, that would be nice if you were also to fill out the feedback. And if you want to grab a coffee remotely, then that's the right QR code. Yes. Thank you very much.